described earlier, we should not confuse someone who's at the platform of sadhya, someone who's on the platform of sadhana, sadhana having achieved the goal. He's also practicing the same bhakti, Shravana, Kirtana, Bhakti, too. So he's externally seems the same. Prabhupada chanted around, Prabhupada followed the principles, rose early in the morning, he was doing the same thing that we're doing. But he was certainly at a different level of devotional service. But devotional service is meant to be practiced by everyone. So even the most exalted personalities practice the same activities. But let's see, what is the effect and the process by which, when one practices devotional service at any stage in spiritual life, one becomes elevated. So here, references to the second chapter of first canto, verses 17 to 21, which are verses that more or less everyone should know. So these are the verses beginning with Srimata Sakta Krishna Punya Shona Kirtana Vidyantos Mevadrani Vidunoti Suitstan Nasta Presha Badresha Nityam Bhagavad Sivya Bhakti Nashtoki Bhakti Bhavaneshki Padayasmo Bhavakamalo Yashe Chetare Karanavitam Skita Sakyata Sidati Evam Prasamam Silabhava Bhakti Jogatava Vigyanam Vedasam Sajayate Vidyate Vidari Grantas Chityanti Sada Samshaya Kshiyanti Chasya Karamani Vishtari Nishpare. And translation. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the paramount in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who relishes his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. By regularly hearing the Bhagavatam and rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is practically destroyed, and loving service unto the glorious Lord, whose praise with transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. At the time loving service is established in the heart, the modes of passion and ignorance and lust and desire disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness. He becomes happy. Thus established in the mode of goodness, the man rejuvenated by loving service to the Lord gains liberation from material association, mukti, and comes to know scientifically of the personality of God. Thus the knots of the heart and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions, karma, is terminated when one sees the self as the master. It's very important things. Here once again, the sequence of advancement is described, as well as the process. I'll just review the sequence which we described earlier, but now our point is to actually emphasize the process. Krishna states that by chanting and hearing at that time and rendering devotional service, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and rendering service to the personality of Bhagavatam, he says all that is troublesome to the heart is practically destroyed, and loving service is established. He says at that time, the modes of passion, he says when loving service is established in the heart. Now, loving service really means that one already has a certain degree of attachment, because the word loving is used. It's not just ordinary service, it's actually an elevated state of service. He says then, the modes of passion and ignorance and lust and desire disappear from the heart. And when those disappear from the heart, then the devotee is established in goodness. So here the sequence is that the practice of devotional service purifies lust, ignorance, passion, and desire, and then elevates one to the mode of goodness. And at that point, established in the mode of goodness, rejuvenated by loving service, one attains liberation. So, confirming the sequence that was discussed earlier. Now, over and beyond the sequence, we want to talk about what is taking place. So I just want to summarize what was being stated in these verses. He says, material desire is cleansed through hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So our hearts are full of so many desires, and these are called anarthas. And this is a common word that we generally use. So, what happens? By hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and by regular service, this is the cleansing process. So regular hearing, Nityam Bhagavata Seva. Therefore we have Bhagavatam class. We should do practical service to Vaishnavas. Especially, one should seek out advanced Vaishnavas. Mahatvaram Seva would be good. This platform of mukti comes, is the door. What is the gate? The gate to achieve mukti is Mahat Seva. You have to serve Mahat, to serve Vaishnavas. So, desires are cleansed through the hearing process. And this has to be a regular process. Regular hearing and service cleanses the heart. Then, when the heart becomes cleansed, then loving devotional service is established. And it is established irrevocably. That means loving service is that type of service which no longer decreases. It is fixed. It becomes nishtha. So we won't get into this in detail, but in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his Madhurya Kadambini, he explains the process. Here, Srimad Bhakta Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana and Riddhanto Stoyavadrani Vidinoti Sritsara refers to Anishta Bhakti and Nishta Bhakti, or Naishta Bhakti. So, irrevocable devotional service. It is an elevated stage of devotional service. Prabhupada uses this term, fixed up. When someone is fixed up in Krishna consciousness, that means that he does not slide down. This irrevocable devotional service. He says, then, with that type of devotional service, passion and ignorance and lust disappear. So when one is performing steady devotional service, practically speaking, as we were talking about earlier, that it is Avyavicharani Bhakti, Avyavicharani Bhakti, that will destroy the influence of passion. This type of devotional service, where one is wavering, it has very weak effect. It also has effect, but it's much slower. So real effect will happen when it is irrevocably established. And at that platform, then passion and ignorance and lust disappear. So what is this loving devotional service? It is still chanting, hearing, and rendering service to Vaishnavas. In this way, one then becomes established in goodness. The process is still the same. Still chanting, still hearing, still sadhu seva. And then one comes to the mode of goodness. Goodness will come when the qualities of passion and ignorance disappear. And in this way, one becomes free from the modes of material nature. How? By the same Shravana, Srimata Swakata Krishna, in the mode of goodness. Activity will be the same, always will be the same, but it will be giving successive degrees of purification and elevation. First from lower mode to high mode, goodness, and same activity in goodness will bring one to the platform of mukti. In that way, one then will gain real scientific knowledge. Scientific knowledge here means Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana Muktasana, Vijnana. Not just academic knowledge. I'm not this body. I'm not this body, but I'm always behaving like that body. No. But Vijnana means I don't behave like I'm this body. I'm aloof from the bodily concept of life. And if you remember, yesterday we were quoting, Krishna is saying that until one comes to the platform of being free from the modes of material nature, until one becomes free from the bodily concept of life, one must cultivate those things which are symptomatic of the mode of goodness. Where was that verse? Here. Until one revives, 11th canto, 13th chapter, verse 6. Until one revives one direct knowledge of the spirit soul and drives away the illusory identification with the material body and mind caused by the three modes of material nature, one must cultivate those things in the mode of goodness. By increasing the mode of goodness, one automatically can understand and practice religious principles, and by such practice, transcendental knowledge is awakened. So, gain scientific knowledge, really becoming free. This means transcendental knowledge is awakened. One comes to this realized platform. And at that point, all karma, in other words, all knots in the heart, all misgivings, philosophical misgivings, misgivings in terms of lack of faith, they're all terminated. So the process of elevation then is mainly hearing, chanting, and rendering service to the devotees. So there are five main things. Sadhu Sangha Kirtan Bhagavata Shravana Upasa Shivanti Ashtakara. And out of these five, Sadhu Sangha, Nama Kirtan Bhagavata Shravana. These are most important. And out of all of those, chanting also. But dependent on hearing and dependent on Sadhu Sangha. So these three activities are eternal. They always continue at all stages of devotional service. As soon as we stop them, we should understand that our means for elevation has been immediately hampered. So whatever stage, whatever mode we are in, we should be practicing these activities and we will gradually be elevated. So the answer here, the process of elevation, is chanting Hare Krishna, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of sadhus, and serving Vaishnavas. But we should recognize that the potency of these devotional activities will vary with the effort that we put into it. It is not a mechanical thing. How we try to hear, how we make an effort to be offenseless in our chanting, what attitude with which we are associating will determine the strength of those activities. And the strength of those activities will determine how effectively we are being elevated. So mechanical means that I think if I simply go through the externals, I will get the same result. Not so. It requires effort. And we were reading that yesterday. Srila Prabhupada was stating, I can't remember where it is. Anyway, Srila Prabhupada was emphasizing the fact that one should practice and make a real effort with one's intelligence to cultivate devotional things. So therefore, chanting, which is done offensively, will have very slow effect. Bahu Janma Goti Shravana Kirtana. Tens of Chaitanya Charitamrita, tens of millions of lifetimes. Chanting, the hearing, associating, but it takes millions of lifetimes because the quality of the activity is low, and therefore it has little effect. Actually, it isn't that the chanting is having little effect, but the offenses are covering the effect of the chanting or of the hearing, just like clouds cover the effect of the sun. The sun hasn't been affected in any way, but we've been covered from it. So by offensive activity, we cover ourselves from the effects of the pure activity itself, and therefore we derive very little benefit. On a very cloudy day, you get very little benefit from the sun. But when there's no clouds, you get maximum benefit. So in the same way, hearing, service, chanting, all have their guidelines. And if we ignore these guidelines, then the process of evolution or elevation is extremely slow. And this is the responsibility of everyone. We have to be aware. We have to be making an effort in our devotional activities. So, four regulated principles means you follow them physically, mentally, you get maximum effect. In other words, and in addition to that, a regulated morning and evening program, attentive 16 rounds, offering of all of one's food, paying obeisances, association with Vaishnavas, These are all regulative practices which will afford maximum effect and quick elevation to goodness and beyond. So here, the summary of how to practice Bhakti Yoga, we're speaking that Bhakti Yoga is based on chanting Hare Krishna as the Yuga Dharma. And it's everyone's responsibility to take it up. But the devotee who Prabhupada refers to is a transcendental devotee. And it is not anyone who is practicing Krishna consciousness falls into that category or has a right to call themselves a transcendental devotee. Rather, devotion, which is pure bhakti, is aspired to by all practitioners. Whatever level we're at, we should be practicing devotional service. And in addition to that, we should be cultivating the qualities of the mode of goodness as we discussed yesterday, and acting according to the symptoms of the mode of goodness. The combination of these two things gives maximum effect to our devotional activities. So remember, yesterday we were making this point, that goodness is the best platform for practicing spiritual life. By practicing devotional service, it will raise us to goodness. But if we make the efforts to cultivate those things which are in relationship to goodness, we will actually elevate ourselves or place ourselves in a situation where the mode of goodness will be invoked. And it will give more effort, more result to our devotional practices. And this is the effort that we need to make. Not just that we're chanting and hearing. We need to make an effort in terms of the quality of our chanting, and we should know what the qualities of mode of goodness are. Samadhamastava, socham, and so on. In terms of all the qualities of activities, worker, faith, knowledge, renunciation. And when we practice those, we are placing ourselves or invoking the mode of goodness, which may not be inherently a symptomatic of our nature at this present time. But by practicing those qualities, goodness will be present. And that will, number one, keep us from doing foolish things, so that we don't incur more karma and engage in activities which drag us down. Second, it will give maximum effect to our devotional activities. And third, it will actually keep us in a real steady state of spiritual life. But it requires constant practice and determination. And Krishna says this very same thing. Chanchalatmana Krishna pranati bhagavatam tasaham nikam bhakti ayurvasvishkaram. Arjuna says, how do you control the mind? Krishna says, samshara mahabaho mandudu nikam charam abhyasina kuntina vairagina vidhyate. He says, by constant practice and detachment. He says, yes, I know, it's very difficult to control the mind. Manashastrendriyani, it's a sense. Very difficult. He says, more difficult than controlling the wind, but Krishna says, no magic formula. It's just constant practice. You just have to keep practicing. So, at this stage of goodness, devotional service is greatly purifying. And practicing devotional service there, one then becomes a candidate for liberation. So we should really make a concerted effort to rise to the platform of goodness, because passion and ignorance will not allow us to reach the transcendental platform. We should just take that as a fact. And we'll talk about this a little more, well, not tomorrow, perhaps Sunday. We'll try and fit it in sometime. In other words, actually, in passion and ignorance, one is only guaranteed rebirth in this material world, even if you're chanting Hare Krishna and you're Srimad Bhagavatam. It's only by devotional service and goodness does one go upwards. And even then, and it's only by pure devotional service you go back from that regard, not in devotional service and goodness. But at least goodness is a good platform for achieving transcendence. So, then what does it mean when Prabhupada says that the practice of bhakti will automatically raise you to transcendence? That doesn't mean you don't do anything. It doesn't mean that it's just you just sit and do nothing. It's just like you've got an automatic car. It doesn't mean that your car automatically takes you wherever you want to go. You still have to drive it. You still have to put petrol in it. You still have to know the rules of the road in order to get where you want to go. Yes, it's automatic, but that doesn't mean you don't do anything. So yes, we're perfectly and completely practicing all these angas of bhakti: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Sangha, and practice the qualities of a devotee. We're making a concerted effort. What are the real qualities of a Vaishnava? What are the qualities of the mode of goodness, which are included in the qualities of a Vaishnava? Then in that one is raised to sattva, and after purification in sattva one comes to Shuddha sattva. And that is the automatic process. This process, that if you practice this Krishna, and this is Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness isn't what we think Krishna consciousness is. Krishna consciousness is what Krishna says Krishna consciousness is. It's what Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita say. And what they say is that if you practice cultivating the qualities of the mode of goodness, you practice being a devotee, you make a concerted effort to become free from offenses and try to be offenseless, at least trying to be abast or clearing. When you do that, then you automatically become elevated. Not when you do anything, you become automatically elevated. So, what are the qualities of a devotee that one should try to emulate? And these qualities of a devotee, in other words, a transcendental devotee, include the qualities of goodness. See in the 12th chapter, 13 to 20 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is explaining. One who is not envious, and these are the things which should be cultivated, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor, who is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me. Such a devotee is very dear to me. He for whom no one is put into difficulty, who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equiposed in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, is very dear to me. My devotee who is not dependent on the ordinary causal activities, who is pure, expert, without cares, free from all pains, not striving from some result, is very dear to me. One who neither rejoices nor grieves, who neither laments nor desires, who renounces both auspicious and inauspicious things. Such a devotee is very dear to me. One who is equal to friends and enemies, who is equiposed in honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, who is always free from contaminating association, always silent and satisfied with anything, who doesn't care for any residence, who is fixed in knowledge, and who is engaged in devotional service. Such a person is very dear to me. Those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear. So when we cultivate these qualities of the devotee, in these qualities is included the qualities of goodness. They're non-different. And when we practice bhakti, we'll automatically, this practice of bhakti, this will automatically raise us to transcendence. Not any type of self-defined practice of bhakti. And if we don't make an effort to cultivate these above qualities, then we have one last alternative. You have to chant offenselessly. Because offenseless chanting will do everything. Then, what is that? That Sarvaguna Satta Harasati Surahara Bhaktasya Kuto Mahagnana. Yes. So if you chant offenselessly, then you'll quickly reach that platform without any extraneous effort. Can you chant offenselessly? Can you chant? Are we chanting offenselessly? Because offenseless chanting, that will give very, very... Offenseless chanting means more goodness, at least. Offenseless chanting means that more or less these qualities are already there. So these are the things which require either offenseless chanting, and Prabhupada says by chanting Hare Krishna, one automatically acquires all the qualities of devotees, offenseless chanting. Otherwise, we have to make a concerted effort. Offensive chanting will be very, very slow. Bahu Janma Koti. Many, many Koti lifetimes. Koti make the effort to be in goodness, to practice qualities of devotees, to chant, hear, and associate effective, and then maximum effect. We will come to that platform. But if the chanting is offensive, it will take a very long time, and you really have to struggle with the lower modes. So either we struggle to practice the qualities of the upper modes, and that's a struggle, no doubt, hard work. But if you don't struggle to do that, then you've got to struggle with ignorance and passion, and that's not progressive. But the struggle will be there in any case. So of course the last alternative is, I just simply have to have faith, and it's also a matter of mercy. It will all happen by mercy. Prabhupada's mercy will just take me back. I won't have to do anything. You could make that argument. But you have to think really well whether you want to bet all of your cards, although we don't bet on that argument. That it's simply just going to happen by mercy. Because this definition of mercy is that I do very little or nothing. But what does it really mean to actually get mercy? And what does mercy really constitute? So I'll read a quote from Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Srila Prabhupada talks about this. That mercy doesn't mean that I just sort of sit and expect things to fall from heaven. Prabhupada says, to be empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to qualify himself. This means that one must engage 24 hours daily in the loving devotional service of the Lord. The material position of a devotee doesn't matter, because devotional service is not dependent on material considerations. Material position means what someone was previously. In his earlier life, Srila Rupa Goswami was a government officer in the Grihastha. He was not even a brahmachari or a sannyasi. He associated with milechas and yavanas, but because he was always eager to serve, he was a qualified recipient of the Lord's mercy. Eager to serve. He was a qualified recipient of the Lord's mercy. That's what it means to get mercy. Eager to serve. A sincere devotee can therefore be empowered by the Lord, regardless of his situation. To keep oneself free from material contamination and attain the Lord's favor, one must be sincerely anxious to render service to the Lord. This is the only qualification necessary. Sincerely anxious to render service. That means that you're not only just anxious to render service, but you're also taking the opportunity to render service. So Prabhupada is making these points. That one has to be eager to serve. And eager to serve means taking advantage of all the angas, opportunities, to render devotional service. He says this is the only qualification necessary. So when we talk about mercy, we should not think that mercy is some kind of super mystical thing that just descends out of nothing. Mercy means that when we make an effort to practice devotional service, we get the mercy of the Lord. That we're able to chant Hare Krishna, that's Krishna's mercy. That we're able to sit here together, this Krishna's mercy. We are getting mercy. And that we're able to read Srimad Bhagavatam, although we don't know Sanskrit, this is mercy. That we're able to get darshan of Radha, this is mercy. This is the mercy. And the more that we are anxious to render service, the more we become qualified to get more mercy. But mercy isn't an act which is based on inactivity, ignorance, where somehow or other we're just waiting for a manna to come from heaven. It will not be like that. By work, one gets grace. Not simply just wait for grace, regardless of whether there's any work or not. So Prabhupada is emphasizing, getting mercy means being anxious to serve. And once again, for the 10th time, that means chanting, hearing, and other service that's assigned to us by Vaishnavas, spiritual masters, and so on. And this will elevate us from where we are and bring us to the platform of goodness, and from there to the platform of transcendence. And this is more or less the sum and substance of today's discussion. Tomorrow, well not tomorrow, but the next lecture, which will be sometime in the next few days, will be the discussion of the different types of devotional service. And this will be very intuitive because it shows that we're talking about qualities of devotional service, the quality of devotional service one renders, and we'll see how the modes of material nature also influence the devotional service that we're rendering. And if we're not very careful, then that will very much slow down our level of advancement, because we will not be able to get maximum effect of our devotional activities. So once again, we'll distinguish between 4 types of devotional service. Devotional service in the mode of ignorance, devotional service in the mode of passion, devotional service in the mode of goodness, devotional service which is pure or transcendental. We want the latter, but at least we want devotional service in the mode of goodness. The others are not very conducive for advancement in spiritual life. So here, the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam will be the reference, Lord Kapila-Dev's instructions in the 29th chapter. All right, we'll stop a little early today, and have any questions or comments anyone would like to make.